Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, November 13, 2025. It's the first day of the federal government reopening following a record-long shutdown, and now the work begins to send the government employees who are furloughed back pay, get SNAP food aid benefits that were held up to beneficiaries' accounts, and get air travel back to normal. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announces $10,000 bonuses for TSA officers who came to work without being paid during the shutdown. Also, more reflections on that deal in the U.S. Senate at the start of the week, with 8 Democrats joining Republicans to reopen the government. The Democrats not getting the health care demands that other Senate Democrats wanted. We'll hear from a Democratic and Republican senator. President Donald Trump signs an executive order on First Lady Melania Trump's Fostering the Future initiative to help children in and those transitioning out of foster care. The First Lady urging Americans to rise above the ease of inaction. A group of House Democrats blame the Republicans in part for not being able to attend the COP30 Global Climate Conference in Brazil. And 3 fired immigration judges talk about the Trump administration asylum and deportation policies at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. NPR writes the longest government shutdown in U.S. history is officially over after President Trump signed a bill passed by Congress on Wednesday night. Federal government is reopening, but after 43 days on pause, things may not return to business as usual right away. For instance, federal workers are still awaiting back pay, and air travel disruptions are expected to linger. And some impacts could continue much longer than 6 weeks, whether that's national parks trying to make up for lost visitor revenue or taxpayers waiting longer for refunds from a backlogged Internal Revenue Service. There's also the looming threat of another potential shutdown in the not-too-distant future, since the bill only funds the government through January 30th. That was from NPR. President Trump signed that funding bill Wednesday night to reopen the government after the House passed it by a vote of 222 to 209. The Senate had passed it on Monday, 60 to 40. In both cases, it was mostly party line. Kevin Hassett, chair of the White House National Economic Council, telling reporters this morning outside the White House that back pay for those federal workers is coming soon.
When can furloughed employees expect to get paid back?
We expect that people who were actually brought back in as essential employees a couple days early so that the furloughed employees could get their checks as soon as possible. And I was really pleased to see some of my furloughed employees show up today, and there's a lot of hugging and smiling. I think that the payments will come probably early next week. I think that's what maybe even before. That there really has been an aggressive effort to get people to get their checks as soon as possible.
Can you talk about the lack of economic data this month? How much is that going to impact you going forward, especially as you're talking about that issue of affordability?
Well, there's some data. The September jobs report has already been cooked, and we expect we might get that next week. It just hadn't been released. The October employment report for the payroll side will be able to be calculated, but the household survey wasn't completed, so we'll get sort of half a jobs report. Most everything else, I think, we'll be able to concoct the correct number after we look back, but we will never know what the unemployment rate was in October because there wasn't a household survey.
Kevin Hassett, chair of the National Economic Council at the White House, speaking to reporters outside the White House today. NBC News citing a senior administration official saying that super checks are expected to be sent out starting this weekend and into early next week for back pay covering October 1st through November 1st for executive branch and legislative branch employees. From the Hill, as the government reopens, efforts to return the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, to full funding across the country will face its own challenges. SNAP benefits have been put through the ringer since expiring at the start of November, with back-to-back court rulings going all the way up to the Supreme Court, alternately reinstating and then blocking full issuance of benefits. Most recently, the Supreme Court allowed SNAP benefits to be paused, extending this until Thursday, with Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson publicly dissenting. Before benefits expired, states' preemptive actions varied, meaning full SNAP payments could take another week or more to reach people in some places. Several states maintained full SNAP benefits by using emergency funds. Others offered partial benefits or directed funds to local food banks. That was from The Hill. U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins was on CNN today.
When can all SNAP recipients across every state expect to receive their full benefits?
Well, I just left USDA to come join you. It's great to be here. We are immediately last night began moving out, making sure that the program continues unabated starting once the government reopened. And hopefully by the end of this week, most will receive it at the very latest on Monday. But keep in mind, the SNAP program is funded by the federal government, but it is the 50 states and 50 different infrastructures that move that money out, which is what made it so complicated, the patchwork. But it's moving, it's coming, and for those who really depend on it, good news is on the way.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins today on CNN. There's a Washington Post story. The Agriculture Department is preparing to fire an employee in the division that handles food benefits after she publicly warned that the shutdown could have negative impacts on the millions of Americans who rely on the federal government to put food on the table, according to documentation reviewed by the Washington Post. The newspaper says that the employee was interviewed on MSNBC on October 2nd and is accused of discussing USDA programs and funding without prior approval. Governor Andy Beshear, Democrat of Kentucky, was asked about SNAP benefits and the deal that 8 Democrats in the Senate made to end the federal government shutdown and not get the health care provisions that the party had been asking for. Governor Beshear spoke at his weekly Team Kentucky Update News Conference in Frankfort.
We're going to work this as fast as we can. We think that a good projection is middle of the month, that we think that most people could see those dollars coming in. But we're going to give you a better projection as we're able to review the federal information and to see the amount of time. This one's going to be a little more complex, I think, because partial benefits have already gone out. And so this is secondary on top of that. Now, I would say that partial benefits weren't just X percent of what people used to receive. There's actually a formula. So it's X percent minus another amount, which is how it normally goes. So one thing that's so good about the full benefits coming is there are some people that were previously getting help that got no help because of the way that the partial formula works. And now they're going to get that assistance here in the middle of the month. So again, I'm very thankful for all these employees. I only know a little bit of the complexity of what they do, and I'm grateful for it. All right, on the line we have Josh James.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for taking my call. 2 related shutdown questions. Did ending the shutdown without getting Democrats' core demand saddle the candidates that you'll be hoping to elect next year with a harder case to make when they face voters who saw that deal as maybe not worth the long interruption? And are you in agreement with Senator Paul that the hemp-related language in the government funding bill poses an existential risk to the state's hemp industry, or do you see those tighter restrictions as necessary?
I haven't had a chance to review the language on hemp, but hemp is an important industry in Kentucky. We should have appropriate safety regulations around it, but we should make those regulations here in Kentucky, talking to the industry and making sure that we get that balance right. I think that we can protect our kids. I think that we can do the right thing to protect all of our people while not handicapping an industry that supports a lot of people. On the shutdown, what I'd say is that no one wins a shutdown, but I believe that there were 2 losers coming out of this shutdown. First, congressional Republicans, which showed that they were absolutely unwilling to pass a law that would extend tax credits, even though they passed a law that extended tax cuts. They basically said, we will not take the step that's necessary to prevent millions of Americans' health care from going up significantly. I think the second loser is our current president, who very clearly said that he was willing to allow people to go hungry for political leverage. He said he didn't have the authority to fund SNAP, even though every other president has. When we went to court and the court said, okay, you can provide full benefits, he went back to court to fight against sending food to people. I don't say that because I'm a Democrat. I say that because I'm the governor of Kentucky that had 600,000 people that were worried about their next meal, and it could have been entirely prevented the whole time. Our people and the American people are not pawns, are not political leverage. And in a state and in a country where we grow enough food for everyone, no one should have to worry about their next meal.
Governor Andy Beshear, Democrat of Kentucky, at a news conference in the capital city, Frankfort. Associated Press writing about what is happening in other states when it comes to SNAP now that the federal government has reopened. West Virginia, which hadn't issued SNAP benefits, should have full November benefits for all recipients by Friday, Governor Patrick Morrisey said Thursday. The Illinois Department of Human Services, which previously issued partial November benefits, said Thursday that it is working to restore full SNAP benefits, but it won't happen instantly. That was from AP. Turning to air travel from UPI, U.S. airports began Thursday with more flight delays and cancellations, the holdover effect of a 43-day government shutdown that ended overnight after Congress agreed to a stopgap funding bill. As of midday, there were nearly 1,000 cancellations within, into, or out of the United States. Data from FlightAware indicates total delays were more than 1,100. That was from United Press International. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was interviewed on Newsmax Wednesday night, right after the House passed the bill to reopen the government and just before the president signed it into law.
We're at something like 20,000 flight delays and cancellations over the last week. Thanksgiving is 2 weeks from tomorrow. How long does it realistically take airlines to get back to normal operation?
So last weekend we had, a significant number of cancellations and delays. We had 81 staffing triggers on Saturday alone. On Monday we had 53 staffing triggers. So it's created chaos in the airspace. So people who flew those days know how bad it was, but it is starting to get better. And once we're fully open, air traffic controllers are going to be paid 70% of their back pay within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay.
I think then it starts to improve. It's going to get better, and it's going to take us probably up to a week to get back to normal, which is right before significant Thanksgiving travel.
And you've got kids that have got to get home for Thanksgiving. 2 weeks from tomorrow, this is going to be a big deal if people can't get where they want to go.
An interview with the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on Newsmax TV Wednesday night. The Secretary also announced that flight reductions at 40 major U.S. airports will remain at 6% instead of rising to 10% by the end of the week because more air traffic controllers are coming to work. During the shutdown, 13,000 air traffic controllers and 65,000 Transportation Security Administration officers had to work without pay. President Trump has said that air traffic controllers who did not take any time off should get a $10,000 bonus. Today, the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced at Houston's International Airport that several thousand TSA officers will get that bonus.
And for the last 43 days, we have been dealing with a government shutdown that has dramatically impacted the lives of the American people. And people were not just inconvenienced, but they were also damaged and harmed by what Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic Party did to the American people. What I'm so proud of, though, today, and what I'm here talking about today, is the outstanding patriotism and service of our TSA officers and officials that stepped up every single day to make sure that those individuals at our airports and at our transportation systems continued to be safe and secure while they went about their daily lives and limited the impact on those families that relied so much on getting to where they needed to be on time. So today we are announcing that we are going to be handing out bonus checks of $10,000 to TSOs, to agents who work for TSA who served with exemplary service. And what that means is that we are going to not only continue their paychecks like they should have received all along, but also they're going to get a bonus check for stepping up, taking on extra shifts, for showing up each and every day, for serving the American people, and taking seriously the mission that the Department of Homeland Security takes seriously and that they take seriously every single day, and that's keeping the American people safe while they go and commute across the country and while they do their work and business and take care of their families. Today we're going to talk about a couple of individuals that did incredible things here at the George Bush Airport, that stepped up and took on extra challenges, extra hours, even though their families were dealing with some difficulties because of the government shutdown. They were examples to the rest of the individuals who worked with them and endured those hardships and continued to shine a light on really what is special about America.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem standing with TSOs, Transportation Security Officers, at Houston's airport today. The U.S. Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee's Aviation Subcommittee announced today it'll be holding a hearing next Wednesday on the government shutdown and air travel safety with testimony from the president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Nick Daniels, the president of Airlines for America, the trade group for the airlines, Chris Sununu, and General Aviation Manufacturers Association President Jim Viola. C-SPAN will be covering it. That's next Wednesday. From HuffPost, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, had plenty of criticism for his party following the shutdown cave that sparked a backlash against Democratic leadership in the Senate, threatening to spoil their momentum going into next year's midterm elections. Appearing at a town hall in the early presidential primary state of New Hampshire on Wednesday, the progressive senator said his fellow Democrats need to change their tactics, messaging, and general approach to President Donald Trump to win in the future. That was reporting from HuffPost. Senator Chris Murphy spoke Wednesday night at that town hall with Democratic activists at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Jason Sproul from Laconia, who says, he asks, does the Senate Democratic Caucus fundamentally underestimate the courage and capacity of the American people? And Jason says that he feels like the party has failed him.
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's a really important question. And, you know, what was remarkable to me was the number of federal employees who were calling our offices and saying, this is hard on us, right? This is really hard on us, but we feel like you have to follow through. Now, not everybody was sending that message, I'll admit to you that, but there were a lot of folks who were being harmed during this shutdown who believed in the end that the principle of protecting democracy was really important. Now, of course, the difficulty here was that there was going to be harm, and there is harm either way. The shutdown was terrible. It hurt people. But ending the shutdown without a protection for people whose premiums are going to go up, well, that's pain as well. It's both life and death pain, but arguably more life and death pain if 22 million people in this country have their premiums go up. I went down to South Florida with Elizabeth Warren and Tina Smith, senator from Minnesota, about a week ago, because there's more people on the ACA down there than any part of the country, and nobody's telling their story in Washington because they have, you know, representation in the Senate and mostly in the House who are just employees of Donald Trump. And the stories we heard there were just like heartbreaking. I mean, one woman who's got multiple malignant melanoma. Her husband has a really complicated form of diabetes that involves a lot of seizures. They have coverage right now through the Affordable Care Act. Their premium isn't going up by 10%, 20%, 50%. It's going up by 100%. Their premium is doubling. They cannot afford it for both of them. They can afford it for one of them. They have 4 kids. So what's the conversation they're having at home? Who's going to survive? Who isn't, right? I mean, that's a conversation in the richest, most prosperous country in the world we should never be having, but certainly not having as a consequence of a piece of legislation that took their health care in order to pass a giant tax cut for billionaires and corporations. That's fundamentally immoral. So the challenge here is that no matter what decision we made, hold out to get the tax credits taken care of or continue the shutdown, there was pain either way. But I do believe to the heart of the question that, well, not everyone in this country was willing to let this shutdown continue to go on. There were a lot of folks who understood what I was telling you, that if you allow a despot to weaponize our compassion against us, it never ends. It gets worse, not better, and that's the challenge going forward.
Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, Wednesday night at a town hall meeting with Democratic activists at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. Senator John Husted, Republican from Ohio, posted a video Wednesday night on his takeaways from the end of the federal government shutdown.
After 43 days, it's finally over. We got to vote to reopen the government. It was completely unnecessary that this happened. I voted 16 times to reopen the government before finally 8 Democrats joined us, fighting back against Chuck Schumer and the radical left to say enough is enough. And so together, those moderate Democrats and all of us Republicans joined together to reopen government, to end the suffering that the American people were facing. traffic delays from flights, SNAP benefits, paychecks going unmet, families not able to make ends meet. All so unnecessary after a 43-day temper tantrum by the Democrats. But I'm proud that as Republicans, we've pulled together. We are fighting for middle-class Ohioans and Americans. We've passed some of the most amazing tax reform plans in this country's history. We cut taxes for middle-income earners, eliminating taxes on tips, eliminating taxes on overtime, cutting taxes on Social Security, child tax credits to help working families. So we have an agenda to help people earn more, keep more of what they earn, and cut prices by reducing fuel prices, by trying to attack the wasteful Obamacare plan that's driven up healthcare costs, and we know that millions and millions are being siphoned off in fraud. So there's still work to do. But today, we can finally claim victory over the radical left who shut down government for 43 days. I'm happy that we got over this, and God bless America. Let's keep the momentum going.
Senator John Husted, Republican from Ohio, posting that video Wednesday. USA Today writing, after being closed for more than a month due to the government shutdown, Smithsonian museums are set to reopen on a rolling basis starting Friday, November 14th. The Museum of American History, the National Air and Space Museum, and the Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center will reopen on November 14th, the Smithsonian Institute said, while the National Zoo will reopen on November 15th. All of the zoo's animal webcams, including the giant panda cam, will go back online when the zoo reopens to the public. All other museums and research centers will reopen on a rolling basis by Monday, November 17th. Article from USA Today. Wall Street today, the Dow down 797, NASDAQ down 536, S&P down 113. Yahoo Finance writing that U.S. stocks fell sharply on Thursday, led by a decline in tech stocks, as the end of the longest ever U.S. government shutdown was met by concern from investors that the Federal Reserve's plans for a December rate cut might be in doubt. And from Reuters, striking workers at Boeing Defense's St. Louis area facilities voted to approve the company's latest contract offer on Thursday, union officials said, ending the 101-day-long strike that has hampered production of fighter jets and other programs. First Lady Melania Trump, begins an AP article, is spearheading a new initiative aimed at improving career and education opportunities for children raised in foster care. Her husband, President Donald Trump, signed an executive order Thursday that creates a Fostering the Future program that brings together federal entities, nonprofits, educational institutions, and the private sector to develop those opportunities for foster youth. The order also creates an online hub that would help foster youth connect with key career and educational resources while increasing access to vouchers and grants to support them in those efforts. That was from the Associated Press article. The First Lady spoke at today's White House signing ceremony.
Too many people from foster care community end up homeless, in danger on America's streets. It was 2021 when I developed the idea to establish an impactful platform with an important mission to provide individuals from the foster care community the ability to secure an entry-level job position and, in turn, financial independence. Fostering the Future, a Be Best initiative, provides individuals from the foster care community with technology-based scholarships to attend colleges and universities throughout America. Fostering the Future sets these individuals on their career paths, but more significantly, it equips each scholarship recipient with a fundamental foundation of knowledge that will endure throughout their lifetimes. Permanency for those who embody the fleeting. I applaud the American universities that have joined my mission, institutions like Vanderbilt University, University of Miami, and Villanova University. Following graduation, scholarship recipients from my program are prepared to enter the workforce and ultimately become leading executives. Predictably, they will manage thousands of employees and generate significant value for American communities through job creation, access to health care, food security, and other societal benefits. This executive order, fostering the future for American children and families, gives me tremendous pride. It is both empathetic and strategic. It will certainly be impactful.
First Lady Melania Trump at the White House, before President Trump signed the executive order. The president, too, made some remarks about the resources that will be made available for children in foster care and those transitioning out of foster care. President Trump also spoke about ending religious bias when it comes to helping foster children.
Now, under the Trump administration, we believe that every American child deserves a safe and loving home, and we're determined to support the amazing families who help make that happen. And we have some of those families in the room today, and I just want to thank you all for being in the White House. There is no place like this, and we want to thank you very much for being here. We're great families. Thank you very much. Faith-based, thank you. Faith-based nonprofits are the nation's most trusted institutions, interacting with the foster care system and practicing Christians and more. Think of this, more than twice as likely foster care. They'll adopt the general population. They adopt to it so easily. When they get out, they adapt to it just like it's just becomes second nature. It's amazing. Yet radical left policies in states nationwide make it much harder, not easier, for those families to open up their homes. But we're working on that. We're dealing with the radical left. It's not easy, but we're winning, and we're winning big. That's why with the order that we're doing today, we're taking the ridiculous woke policies that discriminate against Christians and families of faith. As president, I will always stand by us. We will stand by our country, and we will stand for religious liberty. So important. We stand for religious liberty. The Bible tells us, thank you. Thank you. The Bible tells us that one of the measures of any society is how it cares for vulnerable children and orphans. So important, and it's so big in the Bible. So as we make America great again, we are going to protect American children in foster care, and we're going to ensure that they will never, ever be forgotten. These children will never be forgotten, and they're going to grow up to be unbelievable, strong, smart, wealthy, productive citizens. So once more, I want to thank Melania for the great job she does, not here only just as First Lady. She's a great First Lady. And I want to thank you very much, honey, and the foster families and leaders here today. You're very special people, and we're going to work together, and we're going to have some absolutely incredible results. Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Donald Trump in the White House East Room with First Lady Melania Trump, and he then signed the executive order. More from the Associated Press article. The broader Fostering the Future initiative is an offshoot of the Be Best campaign that was the First Lady's signature issue during Trump's first term. The initiative began in 2021 and offers scholarships to current and former foster youth. Participating schools include Vanderbilt University, University of Miami, Villanova University, and Oral Roberts University, according to the First Lady's office. Reporting from AP. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Friday on C-SPAN's Ceasefire. At a moment of deep division in Washington, former Alabama Democratic Senator Doug Jones and former Ohio Republican Congressman Steve Stivers come together for a bipartisan dialogue on the shutdown and top issues facing the country. They join host Dasha Burns.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
Watch Ceasefire Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific only on C-SPAN.
And if you miss an episode, you can find Ceasefire as a podcast at cspan.org/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. A few more headlines From Associated Press, the Justice Department on Thursday sued to block new congressional district boundaries approved by California voters last week, joining a court battle that could help determine which party wins control of the U.S. House in 2026. The complaint filed in California federal court targets the new congressional map pushed by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom in response to a similar Republican-led effort in Texas backed by President Donald Trump. From BBC News, the BBC has apologized to U.S. President Donald Trump for a Panorama episode which spliced parts of a speech together, but rejected his demands for compensation. The corporation also said it would not show the program again. Lawyers for Trump have threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion, that's £759 million, in damages unless the corporation issues a retraction, apologizes, and compensates him. The apology comes after a second similarly edited clip broadcast on Newsnight in 2022 was revealed by the Daily Telegraph, again reporting from BBC. And from ABC News, U.S. Senator John Fetterman's office said the Pennsylvania Democrat is under routine observation in a Pittsburgh hospital after he fell during an early morning walk Thursday near his home in Braddock, Pennsylvania. In a statement from his office, it was established he had a ventricular fibrillation flare-up that led to Senator Fetterman feeling lightheaded, falling to the ground, and hitting his face with minor injuries. Fetterman said, "If you thought my face looked bad before, wait until you see it now." Grounded in Washington this week, starts a Politico E&E News article. A group of senior Democrats blame Republicans for their inability to attend the COP30 global climate talks. A group of 8 House Democrats, led by former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, said that Speaker Mike Johnson's refusal to bring the House into session until Wednesday had kept them from attending the climate conference, which kicked off in Brazil this week. President Donald Trump did not send a delegation to COP30, and the House Democrats' trip cancellation meant that, so far, the conference has proceeded without a federal elected presence. That was from Politico E&E News. Here is Speaker Pelosi at the news conference on the U.S. Capitol grounds.
When we were at Climate Week, many of us were at Climate Week a few weeks ago in New York, he pronounced that during Climate Week that this was a con job. This is a scam. No, Mr. President, you are projecting again. You are the con job. You are the scam. You do not believe in science or responsibility or anything, and it's all about money in the pocket of your friends and billionaires, as we have seen even with health care. But I also want to acknowledge 2 members who are with us, April Delaney and Maxine Dexter. They were prepared to go also to Brazil, and they and the other members stand ready to answer any questions on the subject that you may have. And again, part I want to just say about Kathy Castor, at the table, because, as I say, the outside mobilization is so important. At the table, she had environmentalists and labor and business, religious community and scientists, farmers and venture capitalists, every aspect of what goes on.
Learn from you.
And then we also, some of us on the immigration issue had traveled to the Northern Triangle a few years ago, and what we found there is one of the reasons people were migrating to the United States is what has been mentioned, and that is they had a drought, the people couldn't farm, so they didn't have a job, and they didn't have the food that farming would produce. Hence, they were coming to the United States. So this is, again, as the Congresswoman mentioned, a migration issue, which is an economic issue. So this is, again, economic, as Congresswoman Castor said. It is not only a moral issue, but it is an affordability issue as well.
U.S. House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, at a news conference on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington with other House Democrats. A reporter asked Congresswoman Pelosi about exactly why the group was not able to go to Brazil for COP30.
Speaker Emerita Pelosi, is it because of the government shutdown that you could not travel to Brazil?
Well, it was one of the reasons. The other reason being, well, let's just say, and it has been addressed by my colleagues, Mr. Huffman addressed it, they would not provide what we would normally, when we would go to these meetings, we would have transportation that would facilitate that. We would have security. A large number of members of Congress go someplace. It's really important to have security, and we always have, but they withheld all of that. So we had to put together our own arrangement for that, which we did, and that's why I'm so proud of this group. We raised the money to meet the needs that we had, but having the vote this week, the shutdown is one thing, but having the vote was another reason.
Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, at a news conference. Al Gore, who was U.S. Vice President during the first conference of the parties, or COP, in 1995, and who has been a leading figure on the issue of climate change ever since, was interviewed by PBS's Kristi Amanpour on Wednesday about this year's meeting.
What is it like being there without the full heft of the United States?
Well, it's disappointing, of course, that the present administration has turned its back on the climate crisis. During his campaign, Donald Trump famously gathered a whole room full of fossil fuel executives and said, basically, give me $1 billion and I'll do whatever you want. And he is following through on that and even doing some things that go far beyond what they want. It's really unfortunate. And one of the most unfortunate actions of this current U.S. administration is shutting down access to so much data. That has vastly increased the degree of interest and the requests we're getting at this new Climate Trace Coalition for the independent data that we're gathering on all of the point source emission sites for the global warming pollution all over the world. And today we presented action plans for how to turn that data into real reductions in emissions.
So can I ask you sort of the big picture? Are you optimistic or neutral or pessimistic, given that we've seen this current administration not only pull the U.S. out of its own climate regulations, but also use climate as a weapon with its allies and its adversaries alike? I mean, urging them to push back on their climate commitments as well. What does that mean at an international gathering like COP where you are? Is there a path forward that you can see?
Oh, yes, very definitely. There's a very promising path forward. And I think we are going to win this struggle. The question is whether we'll win it in time. We're in danger of crossing some very dangerous negative tipping points. But let me give you some examples briefly. You know, some people are surprised when you ask the question, how much of all the new electricity generation installed everywhere in the world last year, how much of it was renewable, solar and wind? The answer is 93%. And electric vehicles are fast following as a second big trend. In September, 30% of all the new cars sold in the world were electric vehicles, and that is ramping up so quickly.
Former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, a Democrat, interviewed from the COP30 International Climate Change meeting in Brazil by PBS host Kristi Amanpour. Back in the United States, News and Sentinel newspaper in Parkersburg, West Virginia, writes the federal government might have been shut down the last several weeks, but U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin received a crash course on West Virginia coal and manufacturing sectors with U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito. Zeldin and Capito were in Charleston Wednesday morning for a roundtable discussion at the Robert C. Byrd Courthouse with Governor Patrick Morrisey, legislative leaders, West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, and representatives of the coal, gas, and manufacturing industries in the state. That was from News and Sentinel. Those three, the administrator, the governor, and the senator, held a news conference. Here's Administrator Zeldin asked about the future of coal as an energy source.
Steve Adams, Ogden Newspapers here. Federal government is hopefully set to reopen today once the House reopens. You've got a lot of work that you are wanting to do. You unveiled some of your initiatives in regards to coal. You're going to be touring John Amos in just a little bit. Talk a little bit about the mission in regards to trying to find ways to, A, keep coal-fired power plants going past maybe their lifespans that they would normally have, but also trying to keep in mind protecting the environment of where these coal-fired power plants are. Are those mutually exclusive things, or can you do both? Thank you.
Well, our predecessor, the Biden EPA, they were treating it as a binary choice. You could protect the environment or grow the economy. So in order to protect the environment, you would have to strangulate the energy economy in West Virginia. We don't believe that, the Trump EPA. We oppose that approach. We do not believe whatsoever that we should be in any way, shape, or form making it harder for West Virginians to be able to make ends meet, to have affordable energy, to have those jobs. West Virginia is not just a producer for West Virginia, but West Virginia is a very important energy producer for this entire country. The amount of opportunity in unleashing energy dominance right here within West Virginia is something that the Trump EPA, working with the National Energy Dominance Council and working closely with the president himself, we want to do everything in our power to help West Virginia succeed and thrive. In 2023 and 2024, you had all sorts of different rules, regulations coming out of the Biden EPA trying to eliminate coal. There was a message that was getting sent by predecessors telling West Virginia workers that they just need to learn how to code. And it's an insult for somebody who, by the way, doesn't even live inside of West Virginia. To hear that kind of message is outrageous and it's irritable. And we believe that these hardworking, blue-collar West Virginians who are powering the economy of this particular state should be given every bit of opportunity to be able to succeed and thrive. We can do our part working with the state in order to get that done.
EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin at a news conference in Charleston, West Virginia on Wednesday, along with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican, and Governor Patrick Morrisey, also a Republican. There's a Reuters article, a jump in natural gas costs has spurred several U.S. utilities to lift coal power output and cut back on gas-fired generation so far this year, reversing a years-long trend of lower coal use and emissions in the country. While the trend has been a national phenomenon, 6 states will play a more prominent role in determining the future trajectory of U.S. coal use if natural gas prices keep climbing: Arkansas, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, South Carolina, and Wisconsin. That article from Reuters. A U.S. Senate Aging Committee hearing today in California is related to a LA Times article from September that reads, 2 Senate Republicans have opened yet another investigation into the deadly Palisades fire, adding to a long list of ongoing probes aimed at determining whether local officials prepared sufficiently for the emergency. The investigation will look at whether emergency preparations were sufficient, including an examination of whether there was enough reservoir water to respond to the deadly wildfire. Senator Rick Scott of Florida and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin announced they were leading the investigation, which they said is necessary to uncover and expose the truth about how state and local governments responded to the major blaze, which broke out amid hurricane-force winds and quickly overwhelmed firefighting resources. That was the article from the LA Times back in September. Today, Senator Scott, who chairs the Aging Committee, held a field hearing in Palisades Park, California. One of the witnesses testifying, fire survivor Tom Duran.
This hearing is about the Palisades fire, but it also goes beyond the Palisades. This is about accountability, preparation, and dignity in disaster recovery wherever and whenever it might occur. The widespread destruction of the Palisades fire was enabled by a series of cascading failures. For decades, the state allowed brush to grow wild with no preventative measures. Critically, for at least a year before the fire, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power drained our reservoirs. A small fire ignited on January 1st was abandoned, embers visibly smoldering and waiting to be rekindled with no management or supervision by Topanga State Park. When the disaster hit, Water supplies were inadequate, and we had a severe lack of first responders due to a series of unfortunate choices made by our state and local leaders. After the fire, residents were left dealing with the consequences of being uninsured and underinsured, making it impossible for them to recoup the value of their homes. All this has left thousands of Palisades residents, many senior citizens on fixed incomes, facing the impossibility of rebuilding their lives. For those able to rebuild, the process is an absolute nightmare. Permits are delayed. Local bureaucracy is moving at a crawling pace. There are complex questions of soil toxicity and foreign investors buying all the land. These are not political issues. They are issues of humanity and decency. I remember, Senator Scott, when we met in your office in D.C., you shared that when a town gets destroyed in your state from a hurricane, the pitchforks come out if it's not all rebuilt within 3 months. That's like science fiction to us. Just up the canyon at Malibu Lake, there's still dozens of burnout lots from the Woolsey fire that hit 7 years ago. Lots that still look like the Palisades does now. Up north in Paradise, 75% of the town is just barren, untouched lots 7 years after their big fire. It's hard to see that and believe our town will ever be rebuilt in our lifetime. It's hard not to feel abandoned by our state and local politicians, and it's hard to not lose hope.
Tom Duran of Pacific Palisades in California, survivor of the deadly destructive wildfire earlier this year, testifying before the Senate Aging Committee, holding a field hearing in the city. NBC News Miami writing that a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement operation targeting criminal alien sex offenders led to more than 230 removals over 10 days in Florida, officials announced in a news conference on Thursday. ICE Deputy Director Madison Sheeran said these heinous criminals have gone and attacked children at their most vulnerable state, and law enforcement has stepped up to the plate to remove them from their communities. In Washington, D.C., 3 recently terminated federal immigration judges, Ted Doolittle, Adnan Petit, and Emmett Soper, and the national president of their union, Matt Biggs, spoke at the National Press Club about the Trump administration's immigration and deportation policies.
What do you want the public to understand most about this moment in the immigration court system? Something they may not be hearing anywhere else, something from you directly here. And looking ahead, when we reflect on this period years from now, what do you hope people will remember about what was at stake?
Well, as has been mentioned several times, you're not entitled to asylum. You are entitled to a fair hearing. And when you're degrading the number of judges, releasing the experienced judges, and day by day you are narrowing the judges' options, now I'm concerned that the judges are not able to give a fair hearing to each person in front of them. Again, they're not entitled to relief. They are entitled to a fair hearing, and that is going away.
So my one point would be that immigration courts need to be independent. We need to be an independent judiciary, Article 1 or Article 3. We need Congress to help us with that. And it's not a partisan issue. This is something that Democrats and Republicans should agree with, because whoever's in the White House and whoever is the AG has so much power over the immigration court system, and that results in a lot of legal whiplash based on who's in the White House. And that just makes the whole system so tenuous. It's a structural defect that has existed for a long time. Judge Soper mentioned that the system has always had flaws, and that's always been the case. But then when a certain administration comes around, they're able to exploit all of those structural flaws. And then in 3 years, if we have a different administration, everything's going to be rolled back. How can a system where the stakes are so high, right? We have life and death consequences for many of these cases, be at the whim of political impulses. And the only way to protect that and keep it from happening is for the court to be an independent judiciary.
Yeah. There are a lot of very, very good immigration judges who remain in the system, who know the law, who are people of real integrity, and who try their best to follow the law and also be fair in very different circumstances. The issue with the immigration courts now is not an issue with the judges, it's an issue with the leadership of the immigration courts. The judges who are at the immigration courts are doing their very best in very, very difficult circumstances. They are not the issue here, and they deserve to be supported.
I'll just say, 2 or 3 years down the road, we'll see how these immigration courts look. But right now, with this administration and the folks that are in leadership positions, they need oversight. We need this Congress of the United States to provide proper oversight of what's going on in these immigration courts, because we in this country, in America, we're compassionate people. Our policies are about compassion, and denying due process to immigrants is not compassionate at all. It's the opposite, and due process is at stake, not just for the immigrants, but for all of us. And in this Congress, which is run by Republicans, they run the whole show. And I know Republicans, we talk to them, we're a bipartisan union. They're as concerned as the Democrats are, but they need to step up and take on this administration, provide oversight, and get this immigration court fixed, because this administration is destroying the immigration courts.
Matt Biggs, president of the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, of which the National Association of Immigration Judges is a part, on a panel with 3 federal immigration judges who were fired this year: Ted Doolittle, Anand Petit, and Emmett Soper. This was at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. A few articles about immigration from AP. California plans to revoke 17,000 commercial driver's licenses given to immigrants after discovering the expiration dates when the drivers were legally allowed to be in the U.S., state officials said Wednesday. The announcement follows harsh criticism from the Trump administration about California and other states granting licenses to people in the country illegally. The issue was thrust into the public consciousness in August when a tractor-trailer driver not authorized to be in the U.S. made an illegal U-turn and caused a crash in Florida that killed 3 people. That was from AP. And from the Washington Post, the Trump administration directed visa officers to consider obesity and other chronic health conditions such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes as reasons to deny foreigners visas to the U.S. The move broadens current medical screening beyond contagious diseases and gives visa officers new justification to reject applicants in the Trump administration's latest effort to curb the flow of immigration. That was from the Washington Post. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Before we go, don't forget a new C-SPAN Ceasefire airs Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. This week, host Asha Burns will welcome former Alabama Democratic U.S. Senator Doug Jones and former Ohio Republican Congressman Steve Stivers. C-SPAN Ceasefire Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night.